Imagine a world where every town kept its own time, using local solar noon as the cue for setting clocks. Sounds quaint, right? But until 1883, that's exactly how people lived. It worked fine when travel was slow, but once railroads and locomotives began crisscrossing continents, it became impractical. In 19th century North America alone, there were 144 local time zones, sometimes differing by just a few minutes. This made scheduling trains a nightmare, caused missed connections, and in extreme cases even led to accidents. It was this chaos in the railroad system that pushed for the creation of time zones, thanks to a joint effort by several influential figures of the era. The first proposal for a worldwide system of time zones came from an Italian mathematician named Quirico Filippanti in 1858. That year, he published a book called Miranda, where he laid out a bold idea: dividing the globe into 24 longitudinal days, each separated by 15 degrees of longitude and 1 hour apart, with the first time zone centered on the meridian of Rome. He even suggested a universal time for use in astronomy and telegraphy. But apparently, his ideas never reached the railroad executives. They stayed tucked away in his book and had no practical influence on the adoption of time zones in the 19th century. Across the Atlantic, American educator Charles Dowd presented in 1869 his proposal to a committee of railroad superintendents, dividing the United States into 4 time zones, each 15 degrees wide and 1 hour apart. His first map used Washington as the reference point, but in 1872, he revised the plan so that the time zones would start 75 degrees west of Greenwich and continue every 15 degrees from there. In 1870, he published the pamphlet, A System of National Time for Railroads, explaining his idea in detail, but without a strong political or institutional backer to push the plan forward, and with the railroad industry fragmented into hundreds of companies competing for routes and resources. The idea never took off. The Scottish-born Canadian engineer, Sir Sanford Fleming, played a key role in this story. He became the face of the Standardized Time campaign after supposedly missing a train in Ireland in 1876 due to the confusing variations in local time. On February 8, 1879, he first presented his proposal to the Royal Canadian Institute for a global 24-hour system with zones 15 degrees wide, starting at the Greenwich Meridian. His idea differed from that of American Charles Dowd, in that Fleming proposed time zones for the entire planet, while Dowd was focused only on standardizing time across the United States and Canada. It's also worth noting that neither of them was aware of the ideas of Italian Quirico Filippanti, despite the similarities. Fleming traveled the world promoting the idea, taking part in several international conferences, to the point where he became known as the father of International Standard Time. But even with all his dedication, he couldn't turn the theory into reality. That role fell to William Frederick Allen, editor of the Traveler's Official Railway Guide, and a former railroad engineer. He adapted Dowd's proposal, and in 1882, created a system with 5 time zones, whose boundaries followed railroad terminals rather than strict geographic lines. The 5 time zones were called intercolonial, which doesn't appear on the map, but was centered on the meridian 60 degrees west of Greenwich: Eastern, Central, Mountain, and Pacific. After much dialogue and diplomacy, he managed to convince several railroad companies in North America and Canada to adopt the new system, which brings us to the fateful November 18, 1883, known as the Day of Two Noons. On that day, the clocks along thousands of miles of American and Canadian railway lines were synchronized, even those that had already passed noon, hence the name, the Day of Two Noons. At 9 a.m., in the Western Union Telegraph System building in New York, William Allen watched the company's master clock be stopped for exactly 3 minutes and 58 seconds. In Chicago's train station, for example, the clock was halted for 9 minutes and 32 seconds. This marked the practical birth of modern time zones. Less than a year later, in October 1884, 25 countries gathered at the International Meridian Conference in Washington, D.C., and officially established the Greenwich Meridian as the global reference, dividing the world into 24 time zones, a model we still follow today. From then on, 1 hour is added for each zone to the east, and 1 hour is subtracted for each zone to the west, following the sun's apparent movement across the sky. And the International Date Line, the imaginary line where travelers change from one date to another, is located 180 degrees from Greenwich, on the opposite side of the planet, so that no country is split into separate days.